Page 355. So we spoke until now about a hefsek, making an interruption after you say hamotzi and before you eat the bread. We mentioned all kinds of cases in which it's okay, but then we concluded that it's better not to. It's not like it's okay to say these things, l'chadchila. It's only if you said these things, then it's okay, you don't have to go back and wash again. So here's the question. What if you make hamotzi for somebody, for the whole Shabbat table, and then you speak in something that makes you have to go wash your hands again? Does your blessing of hamotzi mean that everybody else also has to do it again? Make hamotzi again, not wash it. Make hamotzi again? Or does the fact that they made a blessing and they messed up means the host messed up, he has to make the blessing again? But I didn't mess up, I heard the blessing correctly and I ate right away. Understand the question?
Yeah.
If the host messes up, is it my fault too? Or not? So, if one of the people who was eating made a hamotzi, and he intended to fulfill the obligation for everybody else, like what they do today in Shabbat tables, and everybody had kavanah to fulfill their obligation. וקודם שטעם המברך הפסיקו השומעים בדיבור שאינו מעניין הסעודה. But then one of the people at the table interrupted in something that has to do with nothing to do with the meal. So here it's not the host that interrupted, it's one of the guests interrupted. The host made a bracha, went away to eat challah, but you, the guest, said something. צריכים לחזור לברך. That guest has to go back and make a hamotzi again on his own. This happened to me before. I see somebody at my table, I say hamotzi, I eat the bread, I continue cutting, and I see somebody talk to somebody else. So I'll tell them if it's somebody who listens to them. No, I don't tell everybody. But it's happened once to my wife, for example. So I gave her a slice of bread and said, you should make your own hamotzi again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the kids came to bother her, so she answered because it was something important. So you have to make hamotzi again. You don't have to wash again, but my hamotzi didn't work for her. I think that a very high percentage of the guests at the Shabbat table interrupt between the time that you make a hamotzi and they get their bread.
Yeah, it's because it's so much time.
I'm not talking after washing hands. Between the blessing of the hamotzi and them receiving the bread. It's still a lot of time.
Yeah. Oh, I see. But it's still a lot of time because there's a lot of people that
The
take
cutting
time for the bread
process,
to
the
go
salting
along.
process, I
Yeah.
love the meals where they put a roll on everybody's plate and you do hamotzi.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the best part. Before about anybody else, we have sakah, I do
Yeah.
my own.
But when you said that there shouldn't be an interruption, and if you're talking to somebody not about the meal, then it's an interruption. So why don't you?
Say it again?
You said if there's an interruption that has to do with the meal, it's not going to, it has not to do with the meal.
Here it has nothing to do with the meal.
So then why do you even go back and wash the
Not wash.
Just do the meal.
Hamotzi. Hamotzi didn't count.
Well, it's just... It's like, I mean, it's like a blessing in vain.
And so we're going to talk soon. Yeah, it is a blessing. We're going to talk soon about what happens if the host already tasted the bread, and that's when you talk. But here we're talking about before he tasted the bread.
You just finish the bracha, he's still cutting, and then you start chatting.
Starts talking while he...
You start talking.
Before he ate the bread?
Before he ate the bread, not before you ate the bread.
Yeah.
Two different halachic questions. One is, host makes a hamotzi, and then before he eats his own bread, you talk in something that you're not allowed to speak in.
Mm.
That's what you just said. You have to go back and make hamotzi again when you get your piece of bread.
You have to make your own?
Your own again.
But it's like you never heard
but
his. You can't see
he,
yours.
he doesn't have to. You have to.
Yeah.
Now here the question is, what happens if he makes the blessing hamotzi and he eats the bread, and then you talk before you ate your bread? Now we're going to deal with that question. Those are two different questions. אבל אם לאחר שטעם המברך, but if after the one who made the blessing tasted, הפסיקו השומעים בדיבור שאינו מעניין הסעודה, the people who are listening, the guests, they interrupt with speech that is not part of the meal. אם אפשר הדבר יחזרו וישמעו הברכה מאחר שהוא שומע הברכה. If possible, there's enough halachic reason to assume that you didn't fulfill your obligation. And therefore you should try to ask somebody who didn't hear the original hamotzi and is about to make their own hamotzi, ask them to make hamotzi with you in mind. That way you don't have to get in a situation where you're saying a blessing, but you still get the reward for the blessing because this person didn't hear the hamotzi.
Wow. So someone can blow your motzi by just chatting it up after.
Well, he's
you
going to blow
finish.
his own hamotzi. The host is covered. I mean, you make hamotzi, you're the host. You make hamotzi, you taste the bread. But I talk.
Yeah.
So at that point in time, there's a machloket whether or not I should be making my own blessing again. Because you already tasted. I mean, the mitzvah is over. So at this point, the poskim who say you have to make the blessing again are arguing with the poskim who say you don't have to make a blessing again. Because of that, we're going to try to do one of two things. Either Baruch wasn't in the room. So I say, hey Baruch, you're going to make hamotzi? Do you mind making hamotzi with me in mind? Because I don't want to say the blessing if I don't need to. But I also don't want to eat bread if according to the poskim who say I need to eat the blessing.
So that,
But wait, who are we talking about would be doing this though? Because you're the host.
You're the host.
Yes, I'm the host. Okay, so I've
And
already.
you blessed and you ate.
Yeah.
Now I talk. Before I ate my bread.
Mhm.
So I may have blown my own hamotzi, according to some poskim. According to others, because you already ate, I'm fine.
Oh, I see. So it's better to have a third person.
So now, if I get a third person to make a hamotzi, I should. But if you can't do that, why? Because everybody was at the table. Everyone heard
Yeah,
your
I mean, how are you
hamotzi.
going to find somebody?
Small
It's
crowd.
like going out find a
It
10th man
happens a lot.
for
We
a
always have people
minyan.
running in here after hamotzi. They always walk in and they were taking too long by the sink. Or
Yeah, in
they
this
weren't-
environment, yeah.
Yeah.
it's-
Lo yechzeru levarich. You shouldn't go back and make a second blessing if you can't find someone else to make a blessing for you. Because we have a rule in Halacha, shesafek brachot la'aker. When you're in doubt as to whether you should make a blessing or not, you don't. V'nachon shiharheru habracha b'libam kodem shitamu. Okay, already this is getting extra. You can think about the blessing. I mean, say the blessing in your mind without speaking it. Why? Right, you don't want to say something in vain. According to some poskim, it might work in your head if you say a blessing. According to most poskim, it doesn't. I wouldn't think the bracha.
so it means that basically, it's a decision whether you can be yotzi, someone doing the bracha, or not. I mean, like, for Kiddush on Shabbos day, you just have to hear it. You don't have to actually drink the wine. But is it the same thing for bread? You hear the bracha, and the host eats. Then, if you don't have to say the bracha again, then basically he's done it for you. You don't. It's not like any particular thing you have to do. Is that true?
Let's do this inside. Let me just read one more sentence. And if somebody does want to repeat the blessing because they blew it, you shouldn't protest. I mean, they're not doing something wrong. They have on whom to rely. It's not a blessing in vain. They would avoid it, but if they want to make a blessing again, they can. Do you guys have time for some serious footnotes?
Yeah, I think we need them.
Let's do it. The bottom of page 355. Yud Zayin, the last three lines. You see that? This is a long footnote. This footnote might take us till the end of class. But I'm asking you to hold, they say in leader, hold cup. Hold on to your head. Make sure.
What?
Hine Maran HaBet Yosef. Maran in his Bet Yosef, Hivi b'shem HaRokeach. He brings the name of the Rokeach. She'im achal habotzeah, that if the host ate bread already, v'hisichu hamesubim shekivnu latzet, and we the guests spoke before we ate, en tzarich levarech, we do not need to make another blessing. Who said that? Maran
No,
didn't say it. Maran said it in the name of
the person.
the Rokeach.
Rokeach.
V'katav Bet Yosef, but Maran himself writes lidchot devarav, to push off his words, meaning he doesn't agree. V'chashiv ki'ilu berech hamotzi ba'atzmo. Because when someone makes a blessing for you, it's as if they're making the blessing for you, meaning it's the same status as you making a blessing for yourself. And if you had spoken, you would lose the hamotzi. Ukshu mafsik, and when you interrupt ben achilato lebracha, between the eating and the blessing, achar she'ana amen, after you said amen, tzarich chazon v'lech, you have to go back and repeat the blessing of hamotzi. Maran is saying there's no difference between when you're a guest or when you're the host. If you spoke something you shouldn't have spoken, and you didn't yet eat bread, doesn't make a difference what he did. You have to go back and make a blessing. Unlike the rokach. V'siyem haBet Yosef, and Maran finishes his words in Bet Yosef, quote, V'ze nira li barur, top page 56, and this appears very clear to me, says Maran. It's very obvious to me that rokach is incorrect, and the halakha is he has to go back and make a blessing. So what's Maran's opinion? Do you make a blessing or not?
Yeah.
Yes. והמעריקש בהגות ערך לחם. The Marikash writes in his notes שראה למרן הבית יוסף that he saw Maran שנהג בזה דלא כרוקח. He saw Maran act against the words of the rokach. Meaning, that's not just what Maran held halachically, it's what he actually did practically. Vuvam Birkei Yosef, and it's quoted in the book Birkei Yosef to the Chida, Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulai. Aval harama b'darchei Moshe, but the Rama in his Darchei Moshe, where's the Darchei Moshe found? Just like the Bet Yosef is Maran's commentary on the Torah, Darchei Moshe is the Rama's version. So before Maran wrote a Shulchan Aruch, he wrote a Bet Yosef. Before the Rama wrote his notes, he wrote a Darchei Moshe.
What's it called?
Darchei Moshe.
Darchei Moshe.
It's one of my. It's a beautiful commentary on Torah and Bet Yosef. It's some interesting things that Rama records there that you don't find in his notes on Shulchan Aruch. They have a short version and a long version. And or those big green Shulchan Aruchs I bring it sometimes, they have both of them.
Somehow it's very fascinating to think about Maran being at his table and having all these guests that are somehow not, paying attention and they're chatting it up, and it's like
Nothing new under the sun. That's very exactly right.
There isn't anything new under the sun.
I've never seen anything like that happen before.
אבל הרמה בדרכי משה, but the Rama is דרכי משה, הסכים לדברי הרוקח. He agrees with the words of the רוקח. וכתב, and he writes, שכל שטעם אחד יצאו כולם. So long as the host ate, everybody fulfills the obligation of eating with the host.
It's usually okay for Kiddush.
Now we're saying by Hamotzi. According to the Rama, by Hamotzi too. ולהלן בדרכי משה, and in another place later in the דרכי משה, הביא הרמה בשם אור זרוע, חלק א', the Rama quotes the אור זרוע, שכתב גם כן, he also writes, שאם ברך אחר המוציא, that if אחד המוציא, that if one person made המוציא, די בטעימת אחד מהם, as long as one of them ate, I mean, as long as the host ate, אין צריך כולם לפני חיבוב מצווה, nobody else has to eat bread. The host can eat bread for you. According to this, you can't have gluten for whatever reason. Ask the host to have you in mind, not just for the bracha, but also for the kezait of bread that he eats.
So you don't have to eat bread if he makes the motzi for you?
So you have to understand, is the Rama. Understand here that according to the Rama, clearly, if you interrupt once the host has eaten, it doesn't make a difference. Of course you don't go back and bless, because you don't have to eat bread in the first place. According to Maran, though, it's unthinkable that you wouldn't go back and make a blessing, because you have to eat bread, therefore you have to make a hamotzi. This is a fundamental argument. V'chen pasak harama b'haga, and that's what the Rama rules in his notes here in the Shulchan Aruch. Remember we read that? Where was that? On page 352. Look at 352. The Rama on the top of the page. Let's look at the top of the page. See? The second word, veha. You see veha? in Rashi's script.
Oh, yeah.
De'im sach dvarim betelim. Rama says if a person speaks things they can't speak, tzarich lachazor levarech, they have to go back and make the blessing. Haynu davka shesach kodem shachal habotzeh. That's only if we spoke before the host ate the bread. Aval achar kach, but after the host eats the bread, lo havi sichat tefsek. Af al pi she'adayin lo achlu achirim hamsuvim kvar yetzu kulam b'achilat habotzeh. If you didn't eat, but the host already ate his bread, and then you interrupt, it doesn't make a difference, because you already fulfilled your obligation of eating bread when the host ate his bread. Ki en tzrichim kulam lechol min pusat habotzeh. Not everybody has to eat bread at the meal. Rak shofsin ken lechabev mitzvah. You only eat the bread to show that you like mitzvot, and you want to eat from the bread of the mitzvah. But the host already fulfilled the obligation, not just a blessing for you, but of eating the bread for you.
It's a really very different position from mine.
It's a completely different position than mine.
So that means that you need to say the whole Birkat HaMazon even though you don't eat bread.
It's a fantastic question. It's a fantastic question.
Yeah.
So let me answer this in a way that the old minhag in the Jewish community was that one person would stay Birkat HaMazon for everybody. In that case, it could be that person who's Birkat HaMazon is saying it for you also for the very simple reason that they also are the ones who ate the bread.
Maybe I could be so individual.
Who said everybody could say Birkat HaMazon individually?
It happens.
I know what happens, I'm just asking.
Who says you have to say it?
Yeah, everyone can say it individually.
Yeah, you can. But I mean, if you're not eating bread, why are you required to say Birkat HaMazon?
That's a good question. Let's look back in these notes, maybe we'll get a little bit of clarity.
Are we?
So we're back on page 356.
Okay.
9 lines down. The first word is v'chen. Follow the period. There's 2 v'chens. One is v'chen, one is v'chen after the period.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Now really, our parents will stop here. Maran says you make a blessing again. Ramah says you don't. That's the end of the conversation. But really, it's not the end of the conversation. V'chen iskim levush. The levush also agrees. La'akel b'zeh b'diavad. He believed about this after the fact. V'chen iskim bach. The bach agrees. V'katav l'deyakim b'dim Rashi. He even proves the Ramah stance from the words of Rashi. V'chen iviu ha'olat tamid. V'aliyah rabbah. The olat tamid and the aliyah rabbah also quote this b'shem piskei maharam rikenati, or rikanti as they say, but I believe it's pronounced rikenati, that they also bring in his name. U'midivrei haramah hanal mashma, from the words of the Ramah it appears, dehainu afilu ta'am acher v'lo avarech, that even if the host didn't eat bread, but someone else at the table ate bread first, that's enough. As long as one person ate bread, that's what the Ramah says, he doesn't say the host. The Ramah says as long as one person around the table ate bread, it works for everybody, even for the host who made the blessing. There are a number of achronim who interpret the Ramah that way. It doesn't have to be the host who ate, it could also be anybody at the table who ate. And we find this clearly in the writings of the Ritba. Bezoar Lashon in the following words. Umihu but biyachid shu motzi tarabim beverkat hanehenin, that when a single person, an individual, recites a blessing on food for everybody else, kivan shenehena echad mehem v'silek habracha reshein shaar la'asiach. Once one of them enjoys the food, not just the host, just once one of them enjoys the food that you made a blessing on, everybody else can now talk. Now I'm going to save you from a lot of problems. According to this opinion, you can now understand why after the person eats hamotzi, everybody starts talking. They all are relying on the Ramah. They don't know it, but they are. It must be that's the motivation.
Yeah.
And it seems that according to this Ritba, that even ideally, once the host eats, there's no reason to wait. You just can talk right away. ועיין עוד בחידושי רבינו אברהם הלשבילי והרדב"א, if you look in the writings of רבינו אברהם הלשבילי in the רדב"א, וברכות ברכות הרדב"א, וכן כתב בהדי הרבייה, the רבייה writes the same thing clearly, וכן פסקו כמה אחרונים לחוש בזה לדעת רוקח שנחזור לברך, and there are a number of אחרונים who write Aruch HaShulchan, the Ginat Vradim, they write that because of this opinion, even if you want to follow Maran and go back to make a blessing, you shouldn't. Because maybe now you're saying a blessing in vain. Once there are all these rabbis who say you don't go back to make a blessing at all. Ulam HaMagen Avraham. In steps the Magen Avraham. And he writes, Kadav, I'm in the second paragraph from page 346. Ulam HaMagen Avraham Kadav. The Magen Avraham writes, Lidchot divrei harokech, to disprove the words of the rokech. Levi b'shem HaTosafot, he brings the writings of the Tosafot, V'arosh, and the Rosh, V'aravan, V'mordechai. Delo kerokech, he quotes a number of poskim, rishonim, that don't hold like the rokech. Udelo kemi shekadav, kemo shekadav divrei chamudot Davi raya divrei Tosafot. And unlike the Divrei Chamudot who tried to bring a proof from Tosafot, the Magen Avraham brings a disproof from there. He shows that even that which you're relying on to back up this opinion of the Rokech, which is what the Rama rules, there's ways to read it in such a fashion that it won't prove your point. The same Magen Avraham, and the Magen Avraham writes, She'ilu ra'a harama divrei Tosafot v'arosh v'amordechai, that if the Rama would have seen the writings of the Tosafot and the Rosh and the Mordechai, lo haya cholek alehem, he would not argue with them. Two things you learn from there. First, the Rama didn't know everything before he began ruling halakha. Sure, it's surprise. Don't get so scared. You have this attitude. He doesn't know everything, can't tell you anything. That's not true. It's not true. There's a lot of, but there's some Rishonim. When they were asked questions about Shas, about the Talmud, they, oh, I never studied that directly of Talmud in my life. I'm talking about like Rishonim that are the commentaries on the Talmud. What's irrelevant? We didn't study that directly. Today everyone wants to finish Shas. Why? Finish 5 Masechtot that you know well. You don't even know all of them not well. And the second thing you learn here is the rabbis will do this a lot in history. If only he would have seen this one, he would have never said what he said. How do you know? Maybe the Rama was so convinced that Rokach is right, it doesn't make a difference who would tell him otherwise. The Kabbalist loves to do this. If only Maran saw what the Arizal wrote, he would never say what he said. Maybe yes, maybe no. Where does it say that? Where did Maran write, hey, if I ever argue with the Arizal, then throw my words out?
They're contemporaries too, right?
Yes. Which is why, so Maran and Arizal's case, it's a chance they didn't know what each other wrote because they were writing it either right before or after the death of each other or in the same lifetime. But these rabbis, the Rama, not knowing the generation before him, big rabbis, Tosfot, like big names. That's what the Magen Avraham says. I mean, even the Rama, if he would know the sources we have, he would never say what he said. V'chen pasak HaTaz, and the Taz rules the same way. V'shedivrei HaBet Yosef beruim keshemesh b'tzoraim. He says the words of Maran and the Bet Yosef are as clear as the sun is clear in the middle of the afternoon. Umvo'ar b'dvarav, by the way, these are all Ashkenazi rabbis. So understand, what are all the Ashkenazi Acharim telling you? That they don't hold like the Rama.
Yeah.
Umvo'ar b'dvarav dehu hadin b'zeh l'nyan b'rakat ha'mitzvot. And he said, you should know, not only this is also true regarding mitzvot. Meaning there's different kinds of blessings. Blessing on a talit versus blessing on an apple. וכתב התז לעשות תקנה בזה, and the Taz decided to make a תקנה, how? שהבוצע יכוון שלא להוציא מישהו סך. See, the Taz knew that you'd be worried to make a blessing again, because maybe the Ramah's right. So the host should say, I am making a hamutzi for anybody who doesn't talk. Remember, if you talk, you don't have a doubt as to whether or not you have to make a blessing again, because he for sure didn't have me in mind. So even according to the Ramah, I would have to make a blessing. That loophole? Instead of saying, I'm being motzi everybody, and then, oh, I talked, what I do, did I wash, did I not? Says, no, if you spoke, I didn't make a blessing. Inevitably, the one who talks is now no longer in a place where they're saying God's name in vain, because according to this condition, he wasn't included in the first blessing. ובאמת, and truthfully, שמעיין בדברי האור זרוע, if someone really opens up the book Or Zarua, יראה נכוחה דלא מיירי כלל בדון הרוקח. You'll see that the Or Zarua that they brought to back up the rokech doesn't actually say what you said he says. Happens a lot in rabbinic literature. There are certain quotes by the rabbis that are quoted wrong over and over and over and over, incorrectly. They're not. But everyone's quoting the one who quoted the source incorrectly.
Not the actual.
Instead of going back to the primary source, they quote the secondary source. And it's become so prevalent that people... we know the only way you could have misquoted this passage of Talmud is if you're quoting that source and you didn't give him credit. Because there's no edition of the Talmud that has that mistake except for the one that rabbi used. There's no way you could have reached that mistake on your own. But a lot of times you'll know, what this rabbi writes in that book? I said, bring me the book. I want to see it myself. I don't trust your interpretation of what it says in the book. Whenever you see a book like adapted from the Chavetz Chaim book, no, the Chavetz Chaim wrote books. They translated into English. Why do you have to read someone else's adaptation of that book? What's the point? Why would you trust somebody else when you can trust your own judgment? It's bad enough the translator has a bias. The adapter for sure has it. Is that what it's called? Adapter.
You've shown that us a couple times right here in this book.
That's right. That's right. It's a four. Right? That's right. And by the way, this is going to be one of those cases. And we finish the footnotes. We're going to see. אלא מייריק 6 פת לפני כל אחד מסובים, וברך הבוצע על הבת שלפניו, והזה כתב שאין המסובים צריכים לטעות מאותה פת שברך עליה המברך, וכוונתו שדי בכך שיתום כל אחד מן הפת שלפניו. If you look in the Or Zarua does not say what the Ramah says he's saying. The Or Zarua says, imagine the situation. Everybody has rolls on the table in front of them. The host makes a hamotzi. What does it mean you don't have to eat from the bread? You don't have to eat from the bread that I made hamotzi on because you have bread in front of you that you have to eat. Not that you don't have to eat bread at all, and that I could eat bread for you. If you look inside the Or Zarua, he's talking clearly about a case in which he says, that which you don't have to taste the bread means you don't have to taste the bread that they made a hamotzi on.
You still have to eat bread.
You still have to eat bread. So even the source you're bringing to back up the rokech is not correct when you look at it in its original context.
So what's wrong with that?
That's it. We're only a third way through the note right now. But at this point in time, yeah, that's where we're going on. Now understand here what's happening. This is a very normal situation. Sometimes you make a hamotzi of challah, and you run out of challah. So what? You take another, and you keep handing it out. Everyone agrees that you don't have to eat from that bread. But it also makes sense. We say that you only eat from the bread because you want to show that you love the mitzvah. That makes sense. You're talking about the host's bread, because that was the bread he made a blessing on. So everybody wants to taste a little bit of that bread. It doesn't make sense to say that nobody eats bread, and they only eat bread to show that they're part of the mitzvah. That's why you're not eating from your roll and you're waiting for my challah. But if you technically you could also eat from your roll and skip my challah. That makes more sense that that's what the Rishonim were saying.
So when I've gone to Shal Shuda at Dot, the rabbi does the motzi. He picks a small piece, like a crumb, gives out to everybody, and then they haven't fulfilled the requirement of eating bread unless they take a slice of bread when they get the food.
That's right.
And so that is the difference. One is
the interesting part of that is how fast you have to eat bread. How much bread do you have to eat, and how close to the blessing. We didn't get to those laws yet.
How fast?
Yeah. In order to say
it takes time to get the food.
What I'm saying, that might be a problem.
Yeah.
The tasting of the bread is okay because that's what you're doing.
Yeah,
but it's not enough bread to fulfill your obligation with.
Right.
So the question is how soon, how close proximity does eating the olive size of bread have to be to the blessing?
I didn't know there was a time.
Sure. But if you eat I don't even want to tell you this halachot. If you drink a glass of water, and in your first gulp you don't drink enough, according to Maran, you don't make an after blessing. Just like if you eat a piece of cake and it takes you 5 minutes to eat that piece of cake, according to Maran, you wouldn't make an after blessing. You have to eat a certain amount within a certain time frame. Or else, remember when you go to Pesach Seder, like shoving matzah down their face? It's for that reason. They don't have to be eating that much matzah, but they think they have to eat that much matzah, and that's why they're trying so hard to eat it so fast.
Yeah.
And that's why ice cream. Ice cream doesn't have an after blessing.
Mm-mm.
Coffee doesn't have an after blessing. Tea doesn't have an after blessing. You don't drink those things fast enough, or eat those things fast enough. Maybe some people do. There are some people who drink piping hot coffee. That's a really different creation. But most people, when your coffee is boiling or your tea's, you don't drink enough. You drink sips, and therefore you don't make an after blessing on those.
And what is the
ice
time?
cream is the same thing. Anything cold like that, that's frozen.
And what is the time, and how's that determined?
That's an argument among the poskim. We could talk about it, but that's an argument.
So if you make a blessing, and you just eat little bits, you don't make an after blessing no matter what it is?
Correct. Unless that little bit was enough of a bit to make an after blessing on independently. We'll have to learn those halakha. We'll get there. It's not the show. But it's not going to be the first time that you find a psak halakha. And when you begin to examine its origins, you'll find out that it was based on some flawed information. For example, I just spoke to somebody today. It bothers me very much in the world of kashrut that none of the kosher restaurants and none of the kosher certification agencies are particular that Jewish people should cook the food that is being served. They rely on an opinion that they blame the Ramah with, which is that a Jew just has to turn on a fire, and everything else cooked afterwards is considered cooked by a Jew because a Jew lit the initial fire. Maran argues. Well, not really. Maran says the halakha. Ramah argues. Maran writes that the Jew has to put the food on the fire. There has to be at least that involved in the cooking process. They're not cooking the food entirely. Because turning on the fire in the morning, 7 o'clock in the evening, the Jew's not considered cooking that food. It's like me turning on the barbecue, you doing all the work, say, I'd like my steak. I didn't do it, I just ignited the barbecue. But the Ramah says, everyone follows the Ramah. Okay, we have to follow the Ramah. But the truth is, the Ramah has a source for this. In the Taz, the Vilna Gaon, they prove that the Ramah's source is flawed. That the whole premise on which Ramah bases his leniency on only applies to a detail in the laws of sacrifices. But in the laws of kashrut, there's nothing to do with kashrut. And that it's incorrect to apply. It's not just that it's a novel application from the laws of sacrifice, laws of kashrut, but they show how it's fundamentally different. What is required in sacrifices is not the same as what's required by kashrut. And therefore they say that the Ramah is not even able to be relied upon. And that one who would eat, these are not Sephardic rabbis, the Taz and the Gaon of Vilna. They say that one who would eat food that was prepared in accordance with the ruling of the Ramah would be eating food that is actually not kosher.
Oh my God.
So now, here's the question. You want to rely on the Ramah? Fine. It's there. I can't take it out of the Shulchan Aruch. It's there. But if all the stringencies that they've decided to take upon themselves, and they're not written anywhere in halakha, you would think that the one that is already a leniency, meaning the Maran already rules not that way, it's already a leniency, and then the Ashkenazi Acharonim proved the leniency is flawed. Do you think at least that would be the stringency they would take next? Not all the other things they do that have nothing to do with halakha. If you want to be strict, I'm all for it. You can't write the strictest standards of rabbinic supervision when, according to the Gaon of Vilna, your food is treif. You can't write the strictest standards of rabbinic supervision. And that means practically that a lot of the kosher food that is being served is not. I don't want to say because I don't want to make people's life miserable.
So, I mean, in a restaurant, you have many non-Jews watching over the food and making the food. So you're saying that the minimum is that a Jew has to start the process of cooking the food?
Has to put the food in the fire.
On the stove.
At my wedding, at the wedding hall, Hasidic, I said, is the food going to be cooked by Jews? He says, no, of course not. I said, okay, but halakha, I said, no, but we turn on the fire. This is a pilot light, but the pilot light's been on for years. Who knows how long that is.
They're just touching it.
It's not even in the morning. It's just the
Yeah.
pilot light is on for centuries. And then I said, okay, so can I have the mashgiach put the food in the fire? He's like, you think my mashgiach is going to sit around in the kitchen and listen to your rules? So I paid another Jewish person, another mashgiach, $250 for my own pocket. Now, that might not be a lot of money to you, but for me, I was getting married, I put in $250. I paid him to go stand in the kitchen, and everything they put in the oven, everything they put in the stove, everything, he was the one who did it. I told our parents, I don't want to start my married life feeding 600 people food that's not kosher.
Yeah.
Pretty widespread.
Yes, and there you go again. Widespread is not always truthful.
Wow.
There's a rabbi who I don't really recommend everything he writes. He's a little too obsessive with details in Hanukkah. He writes articles. He's a very famous Ashkenazi rabbi. He writes articles in the Five Towns Jewish Journal. His name is Rabbi Yair Hoffman. I'll tell you, don't have to listen to everything he writes. He actually wrote an article though about this a number of years ago. I've shared it many times in different classes and places. He said, I don't understand. Every month, the kasher agencies take on a new stringency from somewhere that's not mentioned anywhere. He says, when are you guys going to start cooking food in accordance with Shulchan Aruch? He's been screaming about this for years, at least 5 years, since he wrote this article. People called him a fanatic.
He ran across the real halakha, and now.
And then he said, listen, even according to us, I'm an Ashkenazi rabbi, even according to us, our poskim say you can't rely on the Ramah here. So what do you want from me? You want to say it's like basic kosher, like it's not galat kosher? Fine. But to label it as mehadrin food, you can't do that.
That's not right.
This was so important to Rabbi Shalom Mesas. When Rabbi Shalom Mesas was chief rabbi of Yerushalayim, he wouldn't agree that the lower chief rabbinate standard should be the non-Jews cook the food. And they said, "Why you can't impose your Sephardic halachot on us?" So he said, "Listen, but you can't impose your Ashkenazi leniencies on Sephardim." So no, we're going to write in the sign, the food is cooked according to the Ramah only. Sephardim shouldn't eat the food. He said, and you think the guy standing behind the cashier is going to tell, oh, are you Sephardic? Sorry, you can't eat in my restaurant. You think someone's going to do that? He would not certify places that had bishul done according to the Ramah.
You know, when you eat over at somebody's house,
Yeah.
most people have people cooking who are not
Yeah.
Jewish.
Most people. I don't think that's true.
Oh,
when they have a large group of people.
You're talking about in affluent circles, huh?
Well, yeah, I come
Hang
from
around in La Jolla.
La Jolla, you see, I don't live there,
Welcome to
but I
UC, Jack.
Us
aspire.
peasants behind the
Yeah.
mountain, we cook our own food.
Yeah, you guys are the underclass.
That's right. And
That's true.
all our food is kosher. So
Yeah,
you mean
well-
it's like big events that are catered, like bar mitzvahs or burrito?
No,
Is
No,
that what
I'm
you're talking
talking
about?
about
Regular
normal,
shop is just for 15
or
people.
maybe abnormal, but they have large groups of people coming and eating, and they have people who they hired to.
Help them
The
cook.
partiers, the
Make the
partiers
food.
set up.
In the house?
You know,
Yes.
Yeah.
They let them into their kitchen?
Yes.
Yeah.
The same people who wouldn't let me in their kitchen, right? They let the
oh
kitchen
yeah,
person in the
yeah,
kitchen.
I don't know, but there are.
And they're there as the mashgiach.
Well, you know.
well, they might be talking to the guests in the drawing room.
There's a Ravad. The Ravad, right? Ravad writes that if you own a slave
No.
and your slave is not Jewish, but they cook for you, you can be lenient and eat that food. Because they're so terrified of you that you might kill them or sell them to somebody that they won't do anything against laws of kashrut. It's like an extension of your arm. Your slave is an extension of you. So there are those who want to apply that to non-Jewish workers that you hire to work in kitchen. Rabbi Yosef was famous for saying, I don't understand, but they're not your slaves. They're not extensions of you. They can quit anytime they want to quit. They can leave. They don't. What's the biggest?
And most employees now have a take this job and shove it kind of
Right, that's
attitude.
right. That's right. Like, I'm getting out of here too.
Yeah.
So it's improper to. The only time Rabbi Yosef wanted to rely on that was that if you go to an event, and there's a probability that there are some Jewish people working in the kitchen. So he wanted to make a svek, like a double doubt, and the doubt was one: maybe it was cooked by the Jewish person, maybe it wasn't. Maybe the halakha follows the Ravad, and you can apply it to our domestic workers. Maybe not. Said each one of those things on its own is not enough, but if you have both of them together, you can. He says you go to an Ashkenazi wedding, you eat the food, don't ask too many questions. Rav Peretz doesn't agree with it, but that's the opinion of Rabbi Yosef.